Officer and chairperson in the Department of Information Technology, Karnataka State Open University. Welcome you all once again to this session on green computing, which is included as open and elective in your curriculum. So already in previous session we had a lot of discussion about green computing, how the evolution of green computing, its benefits, and what are the approaches of green computing, and what are the precautions we have to take as an individual or as an organization in order to have less impact on our environment. So all those things we have already discussed. So in this session, we will discuss few more concepts on green computing. So let us move on to enterprise green strategy here. So how does an enterprise or an organization will take its initiative in order to green the IT systems of its organization? So what are the strategies of green IT? So it has every organization will have lot of strategies which comprises of the business issues, leadership and decision making, critical thinking, its business architecture, and the technology. Whether it is a small or large business organization, so all these organization will have IT sources or IT resources in abundance, right? So it has to be properly managed at various levels. So it is the responsibility of the organization to have its own strategies in decision making, in analyzing the architecture, and in involving different IT infrastructure to initiate green IT. So the organization will also use lot of green strategic approaches in order to implement. So it might be the organization structure, dynamics of the organization, macroeconomic incentives, compliance constraints, and need to align corporate social responsibility with mainstream corporate business. So it can involve stakeholders of the company or the organization in order to make some policies or decisions in order to implement green IT. So it is not an easy task when it comes to an organization. So a lot of measures have to be taken, and a lot of cost will be involved in order to perform greening IT operations. So it starts from individual level in an organization, so till the government level. So lot of policies, lot of standards have already been initiated in order to implement all these approaches. So, as I told, a lot of strategies will be implemented in order to have less impact on the environment. So, when it comes to an organization, it is like an different level at different level, the strategic issues have to be taken. So the first level is the operation level, so where immediate operations can be taken. So it is day to day operations will be concerned at operation level, and then tactical level. So the period of tactical implementation will be less than 1 year. So strategic initial will be less than 3 years. Okay, if it is a strategic information, then it can information processing operation, then it can take nearly about 5 years. And strategic exploratory, so if it is a very large or huge policies or standards has to be taken, then it takes around 8 years in order to set the goal. Okay, so What the organization will do at the operational or immediate level. So immediate action will be taken by the organization with respect to green IT. So take for example, switching off the computer or monitors when not in use, or printing on paper whenever possible, only on immediate actions, because lot of resources will be involved. So when it comes to tactical level, so the organization needs about 1 year in order to build up its ability to reduce the carbon emissions. Take for example, it might include the replacement of the organization's existing computer monitors with green flat screen monitors, or replacing the mobile gadgets and networking equipments within a year. So step by step, the operations or strategies will be set. So next comes the strategic or initial approach. So here it might be less than 3 years time frame will be set in order to have impact of green IT initiatives, and it is based only on strategic initiatives. So usually these are based on holistic approach to greening that included the organization, data centers, buildings, supply chains, disposal strategies, and even that includes sales and then marketing also. So at the top level. So next we will move on to the next advanced level of strategic greening IT strategy. It is just an extension of the previous stage, but it will have greater depth and breadth at the coverage. So the physical infrastructure such as building data centers will also undergo major updations in this period. So, this strategic information will not only concentrate on carbon data, but also information should be collected and reported in a proper way, so that a proper decision at right time will be taken. Okay, so strategic exploratory. A green IT strategy over 8 year time period will have an it will continuously explore the possibilities of carbon reduction, and it will strive to align them with the business of the organization. So, the future terms in technologies and business incorporate into green IT strategy. So, this is the main aim of all the organization in this context at various level, right from operational to strategic level. So, what are the business drivers of green IT strategy? So, till now we discussed about strategic implementations in an organization. So, for that, what are the drivers we require? What are the business drivers we require in order to implement the green IT strategies? So, green IT strategies will have lot of business drivers. So, take for example, it might be new market opportunities, social and political pressures, government legislation, uh, enlightened self interest, and then responsible business ecosystem, and cost or energy at operational level. So, here we will have green IT information and then practices, green IT implementation, green IT design and policies, green IT policies, green IT strategies, and then green IT framework. So, it is not easy to implement green IT in an organization. So, lot of methodologies has to be implemented. It has to be followed. It has to be framed, and it has to be framed or constituted, right, at various levels. So, at various levels, and a lot of manpower and also IT resources are required in order to implement green IT strategies. So, because a good framework has to be implemented, and it has to be at the standardized level, because since green computing is a global concept, So a lot of other organization, global organization, will be having more impact on this topic. So strategies should be standardized, policies should be framed according to the needs and necessities of the organization, and any manufacturing resources or the devices should have proper design strategies concerning the green IT concept. And then its implementation level also, it should have a lot of procedures, and then actions that has to be taken, and then it has to be practiced properly. So all these things are collectively involved, and then this business drivers will be implemented in a proper and structural way. So, what are the business dimensions? So, till now we discussed about business drivers. So, now we will discuss about business dimensions for green IT transformation. So, transformation is a very long operational concept where a lot of things are involved. So, what are the business dimensions? So, it right from the at the lowest part, it will be from the people, that is the people of the organization, and then what are the attitude of the people, and what education and training they have gone, and what human resource development have been implemented on greening the human resources of the organization. Okay, next comes the process. So at the process level, like at the, it might be at the production stage, or it might be at the implementation stage. So a lot of things will happen here, and then all these things will contribute in for a good process, so that less impact will be levied on our environment. So lot of metrics or measures, so we will include lot of metrics or measures in order to measure the quality of the product of that organization. So at the technical level, so again, this is a very, very important level or the dimension where the data center has to be set up, and the data has to be monitored, and lot of resources are involved here. And these resources should be optimized. So no redundancy of resources has to be considered here. So a lot of less implementation, so of less impact on the implementation part has to be considered here, and the resources has to be optimized here. So how many resources at what level has to be taken in order to reduce the carbon print, and so on at the technical level. So the environmental intelligence has to be considered here, that is cloud as well as the applications, and its application has to be analyzed properly. So next is the at the economic level. So we have the cost, benefit, profit, and region of interest on green non-compliance cost. All the legal and ethical values has to be measured here, and it has to be considered at the top priority as the top priority. So a lot of business dimensions are involved. So if, both the human resource, that is the people, as well as the resources are involved, and it should be done in an efficient way. So next, so in order to implement the green IT strategy, so what are the steps has to be taken? So now we discussed about the drivers, and we also discussed about the dimensions of green IT strategies, right? And we also discuss about the metrics and we also discussed about the policies and what are the costs incurred in order to implement and what are the risks involved, so how people will manage all these things, and also with the IT resources. See, so many things are involved in order to implement the green IT strategy. So we have dimension, we have drivers, we have risks, and we also have the matrix. So it is three cross iteration. So iteration is nothing but it is a looping concept. Looping means it is not a one time concept. So this process has to be repeated. So this process has to be repeated many times in an organization, and you cannot end at one level. Okay, so we should set objectives. So the organization has to set up the objectives, and proper descriptions have to be given at each level, and then policies has to be made properly concerning the company's risks and measurements, and then resource requirements. So what are the requirements in order to set the data center? So those things has to be done, and proper planning, prior planning has to be made. So it is not an easy concept. Lot of steps are involved in order to implement the green IT strategy. So since it is a complex structure, so at various level, it can be eased up with the work along with the technological resources and also the human resources, where the people will be having common interest in greening the IT strategy. Okay. So the organization will also align the greening IT strategy with the business objectives. So let us take an example. So if the cost reduction is the key driver, then it will be reflected in the business objective listed in the green IT strategy, and corresponding metrics can be applied. So when the descriptions are given, so it will be considered with sorry, the economic, technical, process, and then people. These are the dimensions. Considering the dimension, the strategy description will be provided. Take for example, the organization can take 1 to 3 months in order to develop the green IT strategy. So timeline and then planning has to be maintained properly. So since it will be considered as a project, so green IT itself it will become like a project strategy that contains lot of tasks, lot of operations, lot of roles, and a lot of deliverables has to be maintained within a timeline. So time bound is very very important here. So iterations and risks. So we may need a lot of repeated tasks to arrive at the comprehensive and actionable green IT plan. So these iterations sometimes it will range over a period of 3 to 6 months. Okay, so in order to implement with new developments and then policies. So these are the trends that will be followed in any organization in order to implement the green IT plans and procedures. So it is not within a 1 day or two we can implement green IT in an organization. So lot of steps, lot of procedures, lot of plans, lot of objectives has to be planned accordingly to suit the environment of the organization without any risk analysis. So let us move on to the metrics and measurements in green strategies. So usually you have heard about the metrics and then measurement, that is key performance indicators. So what are key performance indicators? So it is one of the measurable quantity. So it is a measurable quantity to measure something. Okay. So metrics for green IT performance, it can be based on internal region of interest goals and on legal reporting requirements. So take for example ISO 14000 is a set of standards to create it is a set of standards created. It will help companies around the world to reduce their adverse impact on the environments. It is a framework for improved and more environmental conscious. So next, another type of measurement is continuous emission monitoring system. It is a real-time air and then water pollution monitoring system. It is very important tool for pollution monitoring, control and then reporting. So CEMS, it can be also used to automate, measure the carbon emissions and carbon footprint in an organization. So, what are key performance indicators? So, key performance indicators refer to set of quantifiable measurements that is used to gauge a company's overall long-term performance. So, long-term performance can be strategic performance, financial or operational achievements. So, following are some of the key performance indicators that can be considered for implementing green IT strategy. So, first one is the economic outcome. So, it will reduce the energy consumption by 10% of its current level per year for 3 years, increase green services. That is, example, the addition of one detailed insurance service will be dedicated to green. So second key performance indicator is will be considered with technical aspect where virtualized data servers can be used. It can be used to warehouse the data. So the data can be backed or it can be stored in the data center, and then how the data center impact should be measured. So by using the smart meters to record and then to control the emissions that are emitted from various technological devices. Then the third category of key performance indicator is the process. So under this category, the supply chain management will be optimized to reduce the individual re-engineer process. Then the fourth category of key performance indicator is the people. So the all the employees of the organization are trained at various levels in order to implement green IT operations. So telecommute once a week is undergone to reduce the emissions. So telecommuting means so online awareness will be given in order to implement green IT and to reduce the carbon emission in an organization. So next we will move on to some of the green products and let us have a case study on a company how they are going to implement green IT in an organization. So what is the main objective of green products? So main objective of green project products is to reduce the waste in a proper way and then increase resource efficiency, right? So at the time of manufacturing itself, so toxic free ingredients and environmentally friendly procedures are used and should be certified by or recognized organization. So at the time of manufacturing the products only, toxic free ingredients and the proper procedures has to be implemented. So in order so that the products will be certified and then it will be left to the market globally. Okay. So to impart healthier lives, so promotion of sustainable and green products is manufactured globally. Now throughout the world, more importance is given for greening IT strategy, policies, because to have an healthier environment for future generation. So a lot of green products are manufactured, and then it is left for the sailing purpose. So many environmental development researchers are coming up with their products that are eco-friendly. So now we can use eco-friendly products in order to have less impact, or zero impact on our environment. So all the manufacturing companies should manage their business and employ responsibility to impart sustainable environment. So this is the main goal of any organization. This must be the goal of any organization. So let us discuss some of the applications of green computing. So in our daily life, so without our knowledge, we are using lot of devices where it will impact our health, or we are also using devices without our awareness. Already it has been implemented with green IT strategies, and then where we will have less impact on our health. So nowadays we are using connected eating and lighting devices. So the usage of these devices are concerned with IoT, that is Internet of Things, where smart thermostats and LED technologies are used. So and these devices are globally used in various quantity. So this helps to reduce the energy consumption. So this type of LED lighting, and with smart devices, connected with smart devices, it will reduce the energy consumption. So what is IoT? So IoT is Internet of Things. Now all devices will be connected through internet. So take for example your watches, your wristwatches, your phones, your mobile phones, your laptops. And in future, when you consider our futuristic IT advancements, so even a sand particle will also have a network where we can easily locate. So and then we can record the data using sensors. So all the devices are having sensors now. So using this sensor device, so lot of data can be accumulated. So lot of data can be accumulated, and then a lot of IT devices we require. So since it is IoT, we will concentrate on more wireless technologies. So since we are using wireless technologies, and it might reduce some energy consumption. So take for example, all these LEDs are connected through wireless, or through it is connected through wireless. So if you're having a smart home concept, so even from remote place, you can switch off your switch off the devices remotely, because you are under IoT, Internet of Things concept. So this is one of the product available in market that is manufactured by the companies, where they have taken care of the energy consumption criteria. So this is a good initiative. And you have also come across electric vehicles nowadays. So instead of using fuels like petroleum, diesel, and so on, so all the devices are running through electricity. So this is on a high demand these days, and then lot of manufacturers are concentrating on this technology. So for helping people. So next is data centers. Usually data centers consume high power. So because lot of IT resources are involved in the data centers. So whereas the Google, Amazon, and Apple companies are striving very, hard every day. So in order to build an energy efficient data centers so that minimal environmental impact can be happened. So they are also thinking about alternate energy. That is, big technical firms are now implanting alternative energy sources like wind energy, solar power, in order to fuel their data centers. Okay. So already it is in the go, and they have been successful in maintaining their data center using the solar power as well as the wind energy. So next is wireless network. So everybody, even the newborn child, is aware of wireless network now because all the devices are becoming wireless because of the radio frequency connections between the nodes in the network. So we have radio frequency connections everywhere, and then that is from the that is in big organizations and in big telecommunication networks. So a lot of softwares are also implemented in order to have the resources at a remote place. So the devices connected under this are called as ubiquitous devices. Ubiquitous devices are nothing but wireless devices. So already we are using. So indirectly, we at the backstream, the companies are helping people in order to have the people health less impact on the environment. Next is cloud computing. So cloud computing is a technology that uses internet. So without internet, cloud technology will not work. So why cloud computing is used in order to store your data, in order to manage your data at a remote place. At a remote place. Okay. So this type of system allows user to work on remote. So cloud computing customers do not own a physical infrastructure. So usually people rent the cloud. So they will rent the cloud. So from a third party, and then the applications are given on rent. So one such example is Google Cloud. So all of you are familiar with Google, and all the application runs on Google hardware. So they include Google Compute Engine, Application Engine, Google Cloud Storage, Google Container Engine, and so on. So lot of backend hardware as well as software resources are maintained in a data center. Even the famous Google search engine so will use the data center applications in order to implement its operations. So nowadays we have Google Labs also. So you no need to have all the softwares on your laptop or on your desktop. So Google Labs are available, that is Colabs are available, where lot of tools are installed. So only the user can access these tools using internet. So a lot of students are benefiting with this because any tool you can that has been installed on Google Colab so can be used to run the applications of the students. So next technology advancement is edge computing, because we already have told you that we are in the era of Internet of Things and lot of smart devices. We are connected with smart devices. Take for example smart speakers, smart watches, and then phones, so which are locally connecting and processing the data while touching the physical world. So internet of things will be using So point of sales, and then robots, and then vehicles. So all these are based on sensor data, and lot of data is happening in the network, in the telecommunication network. So at the bottom level we have local devices, so that is called as the edge. So next level we will have the sensor data that has been gathered, that is acquisition of data, and then how it will be stored, where it will be stored. So it will be stored in the data center. So edge computing is nothing but, so even from a remote user, remote place, so remote user, individual user, all the data are gathered, and then it will be stored using, it will be accessed using the sensor devices, and then it will be stored in the cloud data storage. So this concept is called as edge computing. So, what is parallel computing? So, parallel computing is the steady design and implementation of algorithms in a way as to make use of multiple processors. So, parallel means multiple processors are functioning at remote place. So we can utilize this concept. So if the user is using the system, then lot of applications. So user will have lot of application 1, application 2, application 3, and so on. So processor 1, processor 2 can be available, processor 3 can be available to user. So a single user can benefit with lot of resources, and then since the resources are minimized here, then the cost of the execution of any operation is very less here, and less impact can be levied here on the environment. So that is about parallel computing. So let us have some global green products at a glance. So in our daily life, what are the green products that we are using? So let us have awareness about that. So first is the eco-friendly paper shredder. Now every product is, they are using the word eco-friendly, environmental friendly. So documents might contain some confidential or financial transaction. Even you might have some unwanted documents. So how will you discard those documents? So we have green paper shedders that is easy to use, and then we can scrap the papers here, and we can tear. It is the form of machine tearing process. So to conserve energy. So instead of going for e-waste mechanism of the waste products, that is one product is the paper. So in very big organizations or institutions, so if we want to conserve our energy, then we can use paper shedders in order to reuse the technology, reuse the paper concept, and then we can use it properly. So next is green power outlets. So the green power outlets are already available in market. So this type of outlets will have less impact on the environment, and then we and less power consumption will be used by this green outlet. So next time, whenever you are buying any green outlet switches or plugs, then plug products, then you can go for green power outlets. Next is solar speakers. It will help this. Solar speakers will have a double battery power with both the traditional outlet charging and then solar charging. So it has got both the outlet, and this speaker will be charged and then it will get power in the presence of sunlight. So even that this product is available in the market. So then is green GPS unit, that is global positioning system, global positioning system. So already you have this GPS in your mobile phones. You are all aware of this. Okay. So now we are talking about green GPS, that is which is available in an automobile. So it will, how does it help? So green GPS system will compute the fuel efficient route in an automobile by collecting necessary information from the Google Maps or the MapQuest. So many of you have used Google Maps while traveling, or MapQuest. So by using this device in order to reach any destination, so it will trace out the smallest distance route, and then the fuel consumption will be very less. So usually this GPS device, it will be connected to your car's computer using an adapter. So the greenest route will be computed. So what will be the benefit? So to enhance the engine's performance and also the fuel efficiency. Next is eco-friendly verification phone apps. So whenever you are using a few apps in your mobile phones, so we can also have eco-friendly apps. So these, what does these apps do? So it will, if you are searching something in the mobile using your mobile device, so it will search. So it will search all the eco-friendly goods by tracing out eco-friendly labels. So you can also install all these green apps. So about LED lights. So usually most offices use fluorescent strip lights, so which contains noxious chemicals such as mercury. Mercury is one of the dangerous element which is available in the lights. Okay. So traditional lighting system nowadays is replaced by LED lights. So this will draw less power, and lifespan of this bulb will be more. So LED are used extensively, and even while disposing or discarding this device, it will not harm the environment. So now let us discuss about some of the important tips in order to adopt green computing. So, as an end user, as an individual user, what are your responsibility? What are the precautions we have to take? So, that awareness you should have now, because you are learning green computing concept for a generous cause, for a global cause. So the first tip is use products with Energy Star label. Now, whenever you're buying any product, so see that that device has got Energy Star label, because thus that device will consume less power and are manufactured with green computing concepts. So that is your first responsibility. So what is the second tip? So when we don't use our computer or laptop, so please turn it off to save power. So if it is individually used, then it is your responsibility. But in an organization, so they will take care how to remotely switch off the system, when the hard disk should be on, when it should be off. All those things can be remotely organized. So if you want to catch a break, don't turn off the computer. So we want to put it on sleep mode to save the power. So when you are working, if you want to take a break, put it into sleep mode in order to save power. So go for energy efficient displays like OLEDs. OLEDs are nothing but organic light emitting diode that consume low energy, save battery life, and go easy on your lives. So till now we were talking about LEDs in previous slide. So now we can also move to organic LEDs. So try not to use screensavers. So if you have screensavers in your laptop or in your system, so please switch it off because it will consume more power when the system is in idle state. So reduce monitor brightness as high brightness needs more power. So if you are working with your mobile phone, laptop, tablets or system, so usually you work in less brightness. If you give more brightness, then the device will consume more power. Then dispose the e-waste very safely. As computing devices, now you are aware that the computing devices will have hazardous materials that pollute our environment. So that material should be formally disposed in the laboratories. So use low VOC inks, energy efficient printers, recycled paper, remanufactured in cartridges. So please try to go paperless. So wherever you can. Okay. So if you have soft copy, that is enough. So only when you require an hard copy, then you can take. So buy energy efficient components such as SSDs, that is solid state devices, instead of hard disk drives. So use emails as mainstream communication rather than fax. So in fax we need paper and we also need ink, so avoid this fax so you can use your emails. Implement voice over internet protocol to reduce metallic waste and wiring infrastructure. So go wireless in order to have voice over internet protocol. Allow all employees to work from home wherever possible, as commuting to work leads to more fuel usage. So this is a generic concept. So usually shop online if it is feasible, instead of going to shops by burning fuels in your vehicle. So try partnering with companies that also adopt green computing, not the other way around. So it will help change the mindset and promote green computing. So use renewable energy in the data centers like wind energy, solar energy, and so on. So create a strategic power management across the organization, so including IT team for proper device management, data collection, and energy consumption. So lot of awareness has to be given to the people, that is the IT team who are managing the devices. So spread awareness on green computing. So I request you all to spread awareness on green computing within and outside of your organization, because lot of information you are gaining, so you are indirectly saving our environment. So it will be an urge from the department or from the university to spread awareness on green computing wherever you are working. Now let us move on to the general concept. We will discuss how a company can adopt green computing. So here some of the techniques we will be using here, that is increasing the product lifespan. So when a product is manufactured, so please see that the product have longer lifespans, so that e-waste can be minimized, and even the manufacturing process can be minimized, and all the resources whatever we are using, the power consumption and the cost, all those things can be reduced. So if you increase the product lifespan, then the server design. So So I'm explaining you many times that data center will consume lot of energy across the globe. That is 100 to 200 times more than office buildings. So data center is a very complicated or complex context where lot of IT resources are used extensively throughout the day, throughout the year. So it consumes lot of energy. So energy efficient data centers has to be built. So for that, the main device is the server. So the server design should be an eco-friendly way. It should be designed in an eco-friendly way. So power management, effective power management is a big step towards green computing. If you manage the power, then think that indirectly you are taking a big step in implementing green computing. So how big or small your organization? So try to implement this and protect the environment, right? So, an open industry standard known as Advanced Configuration and Power Interface allows system to turn off their components like hard drives and monitors automatically. So, you have seen lot of big data centers, big companies in metro areas or in different various cities across the country, across the globe, how they are managing the IT resources. They have lot of softwares and hardware devices which control all these IT resources. So where automatic operations are performed in order to manage the power management. So we can also hibernate the system when most of their components like RAM and CPU is turned on. See, at the individual level, as an individual, I can hibernate my system when I am not using it, so that RAM memory and CPU, that is central processing unit, will become idle and it will be turned off. So that when I resume to my work, I can switch on and then all these devices will be on. So, in addition to all the above, IT companies must manage power in GPUs. GPUs means graphics processing unit. It is one of the biggest power consumers in the computer. So, use energy efficient ways like using no graphics card instead of shared terminal, desktop sharing, and then client. So instead of individually owning the graphics card and all, so use it remotely so that the single resource can be shared by multiple users. Material recycling. So, another important way to embrace green computing is to recycle the materials. So, recycle the materials, that means we can prevent the harmful devices. And then, what are the harmful devices? So, the harmful devices are lead, mercury, cadmium, etc., for reaching the landfills. So we can also replace some equipment instead of manufacturing them overall again and again. Okay. So cloud, edge, and parallel computing. So we have already discussed about cloud, edge, and then parallel computing. So all these in one way or the other way will reduce the energy usage and carbon emissions. So telecommuting. So telecommuting is nothing but working from a remote place. So remote work is rising, especially during COVID-19 breakout. So we have already experienced this. So we will be using teleconferencing mechanism or working from home uh, remedies in order to reduce the emissions from travel, convenience of workers at higher margins, and then at the low maintenance cost can be maintained. Now let us take a case study. So Till now, I'm speaking about implementing green IT strategies like this, like that, and all. Now, let us take a case study how a company is involving itself in order to implement the green IT strategies. Now, here I will be discussing about Infineon Technologies. So, Infineon Technology is one of the most sustainable semiconductor producers. So proudly they say themselves as the most sustainable semiconductor producers. So as per the Chief Operations Officer of the Infineon. So what they say is carbon dioxide avoidance and resource efficiency in production have been a priority for them for years and in setting up their 300 millimeter thin wafer technology. So what is semiconductors, you know? So you are using washing machines, right? You are using microwave ovens. We are using all mobile devices. We are using robots. So all these are the devices where we will be using processors. Embedded processors are available. So this embedded processors are nothing but in order to build this embedded processor, so semiconductor material is used. So semiconductor materials are used. So according to the comparison of global companies, the World Semiconductor Council, according to World Semiconductor Council, so Infineon front-end production site uses 52% less electricity per square centimeter of the processed wafer surface than the average of all manufacturers. So this company already reduces its total carbon footprint by one third across the globe. So it has invested 50 million euros in the voluntary measure to cut the emission to date. As I told in previous slide, so a lot of cost is involved in order to implement green IT. So here practically you are learning how a company is implementing it. Okay, so semiconductors from Infineon are used to generate electricity effectively from solar wind resources. So they also enable energy to be transmitted with almost no losses. So their technologies can help cars, trains, industrial plants, data centers, consumer electronics, and household appliances as energy efficient as possible. So, looking inwards, it is also crucial that they incorporate sustainability into the management of their business and engage responsibly with the society. They are also moving with hands with the society in order to have sustainable environment. So therefore they are setting themselves to the target of becoming carbon neutral by 2030. So, energy efficiency and hence reducing carbon dioxide emissions having long been core elements of Infineon's business model. Making life greener is part of company's mission. So already goal has been set in their company in order to make the life greener. So let us have overall information about this products that has been developed by this company. So Infineon products in the fields of automotive electronics, industrial drivers, servers, lighting, photovoltaics, wind energy, mobile phone chargers, and induction cookers alone enable carbon emission savings amounting to approximately 72.45 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. So, what is PFCs? Due to their high global warming potential, perfluorinated compounds have been the mainstream focus of climate change management of the semiconductor industry. So, how they are taking responsibility in protecting the environment? So, Infineon Technologies is moving towards work exclusively with new environmentally friendly materials in the manufacture of their products. So, their decision to take up this step has been motivated by both market demand and an legal necessity. So their customers have been requesting lead-free products which can withstand high soldering temperatures. So, according to Infineon Technologies nomenclature, a product that is produced using materials containing less than 1000 ppm, that is parts per million lead, that is PB content, can be referred as a green product, which is a ROHS complaint. ROHS is a regulating body for measuring the carbon content in the product. So beyond this, their aim also is to use only mold compounds and substrate materials that contain less 900 ppm, that is parts per million of chlorine and bromine, to avoid the use of brominated flow retardants where technically and economically possible. So you are analyzing, you are understanding how difficult the company, what are the pathways the company is taking in order to go as greener to save the environment. So you are aware now of a company that is Infineon Technologies, how they have taken measures in order to impart so sustainable environment. Let us move to sustainable information system and its green matrix. Take for example, according to a survey, approximately 4.1 billion people, which accounts 53.6% of the world population, are using internet. Everybody are using internet. So what will happen to the devices? What will happen to the environment? What will happen to the network communications? What will happen to the data storage, data centers, servers? So lot of transactions have been taken place, right? So an activity as small as search on internet contributes a carbon footprint. Now today, think that you are searching some topic in Google. So think that you are creating a carbon footprint. Even a single click in your system, if you make, you are creating a carbon footprint. So each activity emits few grams of carbon dioxide. But when it is multiplied by the amount of people using the internet, it becomes considerably 3.7% contribution of the total greenhouse gas emissions, that is GHG emissions. So this is the reason why we require sustainable practices and proper metrics to identify and measure these practices. Nowadays, instead of Google, people are using Blackle search engine. So Blackle is a sort of energy saving search engine. What is Blackle? It is energy saving search engine. How it is possible? So Blackle is a front end to Google that works exactly like Google but with only one difference. Its home page itself is very black. It is very dark. Dark means black. Why it is black? So to save the planet, as it says about the page. So it is saving the planet. So how it is saving the planet? Backle saves energy because this screen is predominantly black. So the page codes a given monitor requires more power to display a white light screen than a black dark screen. So if you want to display bright white screen, so more power is required, but less power is required for dark black screen. So, what are sustainability hierarchy models? It is at the corporate level or the organization level. So, a lot of sustainability models are implemented in their organization. It is about the tools, standardization or analytical or reporting tools. So, principles can be framed, it can be general principles or depending upon their sector wise principles. So frameworks will be set by the organization, and then natural laws, so legal procedures, legal procedure involvement has to be taken place in order to set all these sustainability principles. Okay. So, two popular general principles are 3 R's and Earth Charter, which is discussed in the following section. So, reduce, reuse, recycle concept are perhaps the most widely used mantra for waste management strategy. So, Earth Charter. What is Earth Charter? So, Earth Charter is an international declaration which contains 16 principles drafted to initiate global movement towards building or just sustainable and peaceful global society in the 21st century. So, what is an enterprise green IT readiness? So, green readiness is an organization capability as demonstrated through the combination of green IT attitude, policy, practice, technology, and governance in applying environmental criteria to its IT infrastructure. So this is the structure of green readiness. So it involves a lot of components here. So attitude, policy. In the green IT attitude, policy and governance is include. And when it is cross-coupled, it is green IT practice and then green IT technology, where from the technical level to the managerial level, it has to be transformed, and then the infrastructure has to be managed well in order to go for green readiness. So, what is green attitude? So, firms and IT people and managers who believe that environmental issues are important are more likely to have a relatively well developed green IT policy and relatively matured green IT governance mechanism. This is the attitude of any green IT organization. So, how the policies, green IT policies, has to be set. Firms with relatively well developed green IT policy are more likely to have greener technical IT infrastructure. So, even the IT resources, what we are using, it should be of green products, so that in order to set the green IT policy, it will be it will be like a boon. So, green IT practices are more likely to flourish in firms that have relatively well developed green IT policy. What do you mean by green IT governance? Green IT practices are more likely to flourish in firms with a relatively well developed green IT governance mechanism. So, all the regulatory and non regulatory bodies should work in an efficient manner. So, firms with relatively well developed green IT governance are more likely to have high level of green IT technical infrastructure. So, both are related to each other, they complement each other. So, green IT practices. So, firms that apply eco consideration in IT infrastructure decisions are more likely to have a green IT technical infrastructure. So let us talk about green IT technology. So it reduces energy consumption of powering and cooling corporate IT assets. So main IT asset is the data center. So optimizing energy efficient IT technical infrastructure. So we have to optimize the power resources here reducing IT induced greenhouse gas emissions. Then supplanting carbon emitting business practices and analyzing business total environmental footprint. Next, we will move on to sustainable IT services. So, what is sustainable IT services? So, IT industry is undergoing shift from product oriented to service oriented business models. So, from product to service. So, cloud based services is one such example for service oriented. So, wherever cloud computing is involved, so cloud is giving us service, right? So, cloud service. So, hence the need of the hour is to we need technology for developing service oriented business system. So we define this as the total societal value perspective as the aggregate value available in the society from an systematic integration and alignment of the technical components. So these components include software, hardware, telecommunication networks, data maintenance, technical support, and consulting are the necessary design, deploy, and maintain the innovative sustainable IT solution. So, what is organizational and enterprise greening? So, organization, whether it is small or big, so every day they are under pressure from various external sources, like legal source or the governmental source to go green by greening their enterprise. They have to adhere to at least four business value dimensions for enterprise greening. So, what are the four dimensions? Cost reduction, revenue generation, resiliency or business continuity, and legitimacy. So, legitimacy is the right to do business. So, similarly, by adopting green IT and green IS practices, that is information science practices, organization may also realize revenue, right? So, this can be done by recycling, reusing, because these activities are involved. So, this also incur impact on the revenue of the business organization. So, business continuity and legitimacy, which is the right to do business, are also equally important. Next is about managing green IT. So, how to manage as a individual, or as an organization, how will you manage green IT? So green IT always it is a contribution to the society, because lot of transactions, lot of online transactions, so takes place at an instance of time, right? So this concept focuses on studying practices to be followed and the approaches to be used to implement and manage green IT efficiently. So, we study about strategic planning, leadership skills, and value added green initiatives to implement and manage green IT effectively. So, if you are working in an organization, so all these activities are involved in order to implement or manage green IT effectively. So, what is strategizing green initiatives? So you can strategize. So you should be eco-friendly. You should use green energy. Initiatives has to be adopted. Global recycling process has to take place. Then online initiatives has to be adopted. Eco house has to be built. Environmental focus has to be considered. Then conservation concepts have to be implemented, and clean energy, that is the devices consuming less power has to be used. So the purpose of strategic thinking is to discover latest imaginative green strategies that offer a value. So strategic thinking is a skill which is acquired over a period of time, which is improved with your experience and is a part of professional development also, right? So the objective of using strategic thinking is to improve the organization's position in aspects of green and green initiatives taken by the organization. Green strategies have to be planned in advance, which are consistent with the business of the organization for the green IT to be successful. So, the focus of IT manager is to explore different and distinct aspects where creation of value is possibly by using green IT initiatives. So, what are the strategic planning? So, strategic planning might take long term duration, that is between 5 to 8 years, and so on. So, the organization should define the strategy and direction and decision to achieve the same in terms of allocating resources. So, proper planning has to be taken in terms of where people and then money is involved. See, organization should have a clear picture of where it should stand in the period of time. So, what is the mission and vision of the organization that has to be achieved, that has to be devised, right? So, this gives the organization an idea to set up goals and also objectives of the organization in order to implement green IT. So, the impact of green IT on an organization also has to be highlighted. So it is a threefold: IT visibility, increase IT value to the company, recognition value of green IT. So since it is called as a looping process, we cannot stop at any stage because it is a continuous process. So every time cost analysis has to be made at the cost of saving lives. So, enterprise architecture planning. This is the next step required to support green IT initiatives to maximize its impact and help in implementation. What is enterprise architecture? It is a methodology for developing a series of architectural frameworks, that is current, immediate, and then target. So, enterprise architecture planning is the process of defining the architectures for the use of information in the support of business and plan for implementing this architecture. So, proper prior planning has to be made at the enterprise level. So, implementation of green IT. So, what are the key components involved in implementing green IT in an organization? So, the every organization will adopt bottom up or top down approach. That is, all people will be involved. That is from lower level to higher level. So, lot of views, ideas, goals are exchanged. So, understand the complexities and interdependencies of how the products, the architecture, and operating procedures will impact green initiatives, right? So, in an organization, how does the product impact green initiatives, the architecture, and the operating procedures? So, the green IT management should also understand the trade offs, the architecture, and what will be required. So, green IT management use point solutions associated with comprehensive plans and sound architectures. So a lot of planning operations are involved here. Next is regulating green IT. So regulating green IT, so lot of regulating bodies are existing globally at global level also, even at national level or at international level, and they will monitor the green IT based applications and also the products. So, what are these regulatory bodies do? So, they monitor and report on greenhouse gas emissions, right? So, these regulatory bodies control and report on waste, toxic, and hazardous materials use. So they also manage energy consuming facilities such as offices, manufacturing facilities, and other buildings, including the data centers. Okay. So enable design for environment. They help redesign business processes to make them energy efficient. They enable energy efficient logistics and transport throughout the supply chain management. They enable dematerialization of travel and other physical carbon intensive artifacts. They integrate with existing IT based platforms to make them the business processes they support energy efficient. So, some of the regulatory bodies are Restriction of Hazardous Substances Directive, Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Directive, so Registration, Evaluation and Authorization of Chemicals Regulation, Eco Design for Energy Using Products Directive. So, all these regulatory bodies are global regulatory bodies, and every organization or manufacturing company should legally follow the directives maintained by the regulatory bodies. Excuse me. What are non regulatory government initiatives? So, apart from the global regulatory bodies where they will measure the energy efficiency of the products of the company, so even the other non-regulatory bodies in every country, so they will be managing this. So, how they will manage this? So that is European Union, the eco label that is called as flower label standard mandates that the environmental impact analysis be conducted on products and services throughout their life cycle. So apart from regulatory bodies, every country is initiating some in some or the other way in order to have less impact on the environment. So German sustainability in the information and communication technologies initiative have been implemented. So the Blue Angel Eco Label covers more than 3,600 products, including papers, oil burners, wall paints, IT equipment. So, in United Kingdom, the British government developed a green ICT scorecard with evaluated constituent departments, agencies, and so on using 32 key indicators, including ICD related metrics. Areas covered include green policy, governance of policies, energy efficiency, waste management, supplier management, procurement, buildings and energy management, and behaviors. In Denmark, so initiatives have been taken to foster R&D on green IT, pervasive computing, and e-government. The transfer of green IT knowledge and technologies, green IT knowledge sharing using international conferences on green IT has been hosted in Denmark. In Finland, the government central procurement is invested in a limited company called Ansel Limited. This organization works with the Finnish Environment Institute to develop and apply rigorous environmental criteria for public tendering procedures, including IT. In Japan, Green IT initiative aims to generate R&D on energy efficient ID, promote awareness of the environmental impacts of IT, institute education initiatives aimed at the management of the environment and green IT. In India, amongst government policy initiatives, also plans on the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which outlines the nation's strategy to manage greenhouse gas emissions. So, apart from this, industry associations and standard bodies are also available where international standards, ISO standards has been set on the devices. So ISO 14000 series, family of standards on environmental systems. ISO 14001 is on specification. ISO 14004 is on general guidelines on principal systems and supporting techniques. ISO 015 is on environmental assessment of sites and an organization. ISO 14020 is on environmental labels and declaration. ISO 14031 is on environmental performance evaluation. ISO 1440 is on life cycle assessment principles and framework. So 14041 is on goal and scope definition of inventory analysis. 14042 life cycle management, life cycle impact assessment. 14043 life cycle assessment, life cycle interpretation. 14048 is on environmental management, life cycle assessment, data documentation format. 14050 is on vocabulary. 14064 is on GHG accounting and verification. 14006S series are particularly relevant to GHG emissions. So, US Department of Energy Green Electronics Council members include US Government Protection Agency and several industry standards have set electronics product environmental assessment tool, that is EPEAT. So it is based on the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineer 1680 standard, section 15.4 of which governs environmental performance criteria for desktop PCs, notebooks, and PC monitors. So the new standard is concerned with the reduction or elimination of environmentally sensitive materials and selection. Designed for end of life, product longevity and life cycle extension, energy conservation, adherence to Energy Star standard, end of life management, corporate performance, and then packaging. So, US Environmental Production Agency, that is Energy Star, where we have Energy Star label on all the devices, covers computer equipment, heating, cooling system, office equipment, and home appliances. Energy Star 4.0 focuses on workstation, desktop PCs, and then notebooks. It encompasses standby, other soft off modes, the on or idle mode. It requires an 80 plus power supply units. Energy Star 5.0 builds on this to include computer displays, digital picture frames, and large video displays. So, Energy Star has been widely adopted. So, US Green Building Council, it is a leadership in energy environment design, that is LEED. Standard increase energy efficiency and lower GHG emissions of buildings, including data centers. So, what is BRE environmental assessment method? So BREEAM standards increase energy efficiency and lower GHG emissions of buildings, including the data centers. So what are green building standards? And then, so in order to build a building nowadays, so a lot of standards, policies have to be followed, has to be managed legally, right? So, what are the five principles of green building? So, livable communities, energy efficiency, indoor air quality, resource conservation, and then water conservation. All these things has to be taken care while building a building, so which will yield in a green IT building. What is Green IT Grid? So the initiative aims to build a framework for global cooperation on the efficient utilization of renewable resources and to help ensure that clean and efficient energy is reliable option for all nations to meet energy requirements by 2030. So lot of precautions have been taken in order to have this green IT kit. So in another way, so green data center has to be maintained properly. So a lot of IT resources are used in a year in order to develop, in order to build an green IT grid. So what is green cloud computing? So this is the green computing model. So where so many internet companies such as Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, and Yahoo are operating on huge data centers around the world. So every day-to-day life, we are using data centers. Our data are in data centers. So our data are transacted in data centers. So if the data center fails, then all our data will be demolished. It will be not available. It cannot be retrieved. So the emergence of cloud computing is rapidly transferring this from ownership based to subscription based. So nowadays, the cloud computing technology, instead of ownership based, it is changing to subscription based. See, users are sitting at a remote place. User is sitting here, and the user is availing all the facilities that are in a remote place. So, cloud computing, it can you can store data here. You can have a server resource here. You can also use print media here. So, a lot of facilities are available. You can store your file here, file server, data server. So many informations can be accessed here through applications. So all those applications, instead of ownership, is becoming on a subscription way. So world's largest data center contain thousands of IT devices and require 100 megawatts of power. So you can imagine. Thus, energy consumption and carbon emission by cloud infrastructure have been a key environmental concern. So this is a very trending topic, and then a lot of people are working on it in order to reduce the carbon emission. So, cloud and environmental sustainability. So, how it can be done? So it can be done through virtualization and use of terminal servers. So what is virtualization? Virtualization is a process wherein multiple operating systems run on a computer system at the same time. So the application running appear as if they are on their machine. The use of common servers and sharing terminal is found to save energy by 80%. So virtualization is I'm using a system here. If I'm using a laptop here, so I'm using Windows operating system. Now I want to use another system. I can take the desktop screen. I can grab the desktop screen of this system to my system. I can utilize all the services of this system. So if I am using Windows, I can, if this system is, Unix system is loaded, then I can utilize all the resources of this system using this virtualization concept. I can also use the resources of this system. I can also use resources. Resources means it can be hardware or software resources. So the operating systems are shared here. So this concept is called as virtualization. And if we use virtualization concept, then we can have an sustainable cloud environment. we can support this sustainable cloud environment. When you look at the figure, we have a cloud data center here and the user application programs here, and the user can access any server from this cloud so that the carbon emissions and the energy saving equipments can be saved here in order to have an sustainable environment. Power supply and management. Electricity transmission wasted 40% of power and utilized only 60%. So, with green computing technology, energy will be used efficiently. So, the power management in cloud computing is using green algorithm in reducing the power consumption by the computers. So, all non working systems will be shut down using remote sensing softwares, that is green algorithms, in order to manage it efficiently in order to reduce the power consumption. So what are the components of cloud computing? So every day we are talking about cloud computing. So it has got three components, that is IaaS, PaaS, and then SaaS. So IaaS is network architects, PaaS is application developers, SaaS is end users. So let us see what is SaaS, software as a service. So it is known as a cloud application service. Mostly SaaS applications run directly through the web browser. That means we don't require to download or install applications. So take for example Google Apps, Salesforce, Dropbox, Cisco WebEx. All these things are examples for software as a service. So we are using YouTube services. So you are using Zoom services in order to have conferences. So Google Meet, right? See, all these are the applications, right? All these are the applications which are available in Google, okay, which we will access through Google. So these are the software applications that the user is accessing. So this service of cloud is known as software as a service, right? So next is platform as a service. So platform as a service is also known as platform services. So it is quite similar to SaaS, but the difference is that PaaS provides platform for software creation, but using SaaS we can access software over the internet without the need of any platform. Take for example, now I want to implement big data analytics. So big data I want to implement using R. I don't have this R software in my system. So already it is available in some other platform. I can access this. So this is platform as a service. Next is infrastructure as a service. So it is also known as cloud infrastructure services. It is responsible for managing applications data, middleware, and runtime environments. Take for example, Amazon Web Services, Google Compute Engine, Cisco Metapod, and so on. So you are using Amazon for online shopping. Other examples are Flipkart, Mintra, and etc. You just imagine what you are doing there. So you are using the infrastructure, okay, for managing the application's data. Your data is there. Your money transactions, online money transactions have been implemented. So lot of resources, IT resources are involved here. So you are using indirectly cloud infrastructure services. So without your knowledge, you are using cloud infrastructures every day, okay, in one or the other way. So what are the different types of cloud? So cloud comes in four flavors, that is public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and then community cloud. So public cloud is open to all store and access information via the internet. That is pay per usage method. So in public cloud, computing resources are managed and operated by cloud service provider, that is CSP. So example of this, so you can see here, so this is a public cloud. So you are using your system. So you are using Amazon, you are using Google, you are using IBM, VMware. So all these Amazon is a online shopping. So VMware, it is a virtualization software. So if you are performing some work process, you can access IBM. So this is a Google engine. So this is a public cloud. So you are using cloud technology in your daily life, right? So which type of cloud technology? It is a public cloud technology. What is private cloud? Private cloud is also known as internal cloud or corporate cloud. So you can see here, so we have an organization and security is maintained here, and we have limited access here. It is limited access, so that's why it is called as internal cloud, right? That's why it is called as internal cloud. So it is used by organization to build and manage their own data centers internally by the third party. So it can be deployed using open source tools such as OpenStack or Eucalyptus. So based on the location and management, so NIST, that is National Institute of Standards and Technology, divide private cloud into following two parts. On-premise private cloud, outsourced private cloud. So it is built on demand, or it is built on requirement. Okay. So what is hybrid cloud? So hybrid cloud is a combination of public cloud and then private cloud. So it is combination of public cloud and then private cloud. So you can see the image here. We have public cloud here, private cloud. When you combine these two, then it becomes hybrid cloud. So if you want to access private cloud, so you should be an authorized user. So public cloud can be accessed by unauthorized user also. So hybrid cloud is partially secure because the services which are running on the public cloud can be accessed by anyone, while the services running on private cloud can be accessed by the authorized users or the organization's user. Example for hybrid cloud is Google applications suite, that is Gmail, Google Apps, Google Drive, Office 365, and Amazon Web Services. Next is community cloud. Community cloud allows systems and services to be accessed by organization that share the information between the organization and a specific community. It is owned, managed, and operated by one or more organizations in the community. Take, for example, healthcare community cloud. So this is a community cloud where a group of organizations can access this cloud. That is organization 1, 2, and then 3. Next, we will talk about green IT trends. So, what are the recent trends that is happening in green IT implementation? So, measuring and reporting footprints, like every day, whatever operations we are performing, we have to take care. So any single device we are using, we have to be careful how a carbon footprint can be reduced. So all those things we have to think logically, and then we have to move a step ahead. And then demand for green transparency, like all green labeled products, green labeled products has to be utilized for energy conservation. So all the customers in an organization, they should involve themselves. They should involve themselves in imparting, that is reducing the carbon footprint. So green hardware devices should be used for making any transaction. So telecommuting, so perform remote work or remote transaction in order to reduce the utilization of IT devices. So build, we have to build green data centers. So green awareness. So lot of green awareness has to be spread among individuals in order to harness green IT. So software tools and applications are used in order to save energy in very big organizations. So a lot of computer systems will be in on. So when they are not using, when they are idle, so automatic softwares. So automatic softwares, with the help of automatic softwares, the systems can be switched off. That is the RAM, and then CPU can be made idle, right? So these are some of the green IT trends that an individual should take care of. So, a lot of greening by IT examples are available in the market, that is radio frequency identification devices. So, many of you are aware of this because it works on sensor devices, wireless technology. This is one of the important device that comes under Internet of Things. Okay, so radio frequency identification devices, that is RFID, is a wireless system comprised of two components. It has got tags and then readers. So the reader is a device that has one or more antennas that emit radio waves and receive signals back from RFID tag. So tags will use radio waves to communicate their identity and other information to nearby station or readers, and it can be either passive or active. Passive RFID tags are powered by reader and do not have a battery. Active RFID tags are powered by battery. So RFID tags can store a range of information from one serial number to several pages of data. So readers can be mobile so that they can be carried by hand, or they can be mounted on a post or overhead. So reader system can also be built into the architecture of a cabinet, room or building. So what are the uses of RFID? It is used in inventory control, equipment tracking, out of bed detection and fall detection, personal tracking, ensuring the patients receive correct medications and medical devices, preventing distribution of counterfeit drugs and medical devices, and monitoring the patients. Next example of greening IT is smart grid. So, what is a smart grid? It is an electricity network based on digital technology that is used to supply electricity to consumers using two-way digital communication. So, this system allows for monitoring analysis, control, and communication within supply chain management to improve efficiency, reduce energy consumption, and cost. So it will maximize transparency and reliability of the energy supply chain management. So this smart grid was introduced with the aim of overcoming the weakness of conventional electrical grids by using smart net meters. Next, very good example for greening IT is smart buildings and homes. So, actually, we are living in an increasingly connected world shaped ever over by sophisticated technologies as IoT approaches at our tipping point. So, the digitization and networking of more and more smart devices is transforming all areas of our life, that is, reaching beyond smart factories, wearables, cars, such like also redefine the work in office places and public buildings, as well as in home experience. So, how does these work? Smart buildings or smart homes work? So, we have sensors, actuators, and control systems. They all work together to enable components in a smart home or smart building. So, what they do to correctly evaluate and process real time data. So, what is happening at the instance of time that data can be collected. A smart building or home becomes smart through when it is connected by the intelligent devices. So, for example, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, elevators, access control, so lighting, energy supply, or water heating system can be controlled remotely with the help of sensors. So we need both hardware and software concepts here. So how to establish green business? So green business is one of the steps for greening IT. So what is green business? So green industry business is one that uses sustainable materials to make its product. A green industry business aims to use little water, energy, and raw materials as possible while cutting carbon emissions or find ways to utilize these materials in renewable and eco friendly ways. So, this approach minimizes the company's strain on natural resources and contributions to climate change. So, in some cases, if waste is generated, it is reduced as energy or raw material. So, these are some of the references which I have used to develop the presentation. So, lot more things we have discussed on green computing. So, I will conclude this session. So, the challenge of green IT are immense, but recent developments indicate that IT industry has greater responsibility to tackle our environmental issues. The IT sector and both IT users must develop a positive attitude towards addressing concerns and adopt green friendly policies and practice. So, finally, let us take the responsibility collectively to create a sustainable environment that benefits current and future generations. So I think you all benefited with the green IT concepts. I will conclude this session with Go Green and Think Green caption. Stay safe with Go Green concept. Thank you, one and all.